This year, because Rosh Hashanah, the first day, falls on Shabbat, we've asked one of our members to address a memory of his during this section of Zichronot, a time to reflect on a year that was different for him. And so now it's my pleasure to call upon our fellow member, Gregg Rosenberg.
Shana Tova. Thank you, Rabbi Strauss, Cantor Goldman-Ruiz, and for allowing me this time to speak with the congregation about a topic that has come to be very important to me this past year. It's the Greenfield Chapel. The chapel is essential to this congregation, and the essence is particularly significant at this Zichronot portion of the Rosh Hashanah service today. Today you don't hear the shofar, but you're blessed. You get to hear me. I won't be speaking tomorrow, which might be a good excuse to come to the second day because the shofar will definitely be blasting. In June of 2022, my family lost my father. It wasn't a tragic loss. He lived to 87. My parents just hit 66 years of marriage. And 30 years ago, for those you know my family and my dad, he miraculously survived a massive, massive brain hemorrhage, which left him blind and no cognitive skills, from which he completely recovered. So we were all good with the life he lived. Nevertheless, I had my own internal struggles with his passing. The obligation to say Kaddish on a daily basis helped me address the struggles. It was something that I was committed to. Both of my parents said Kaddish for their parents. And as I saw it, it was without question something I was going to do, but I never realized how helpful it was going to be for me. The chapel can be pretty intimidating. It's essentially all in Hebrew, and those who daven the service run at speeds which were once well over my head. I had the experience of going to daily minions with my grandfather many, many years ago, so I kind of knew the drill, but it was reinforced more recently when both of my parents were saying Kaddish for their parents and obviously Yartzeit. Because time is at a premium this morning, here's my concern. There are times when it is getting very, very difficult to catch a minyan during the afternoon and evening services, the Mincha and Marif portion of the service of the day in the chapel. Kaddish and other parts of the service just simply can't move forward without a minyan, without 10 people. Those are simply the rules. This is the largest conservative congregation in the entire United States, and we sometimes had to call people just to fill a minyan. For someone who was there virtually every day, I'm not going to tell you all I was there every day, but I was there a lot. I was there almost every day. It's nerve-wracking and troubling. We were always able to make a minyan when I was saying Kaddish, but I remember vividly the one time I didn't. I was in Austin doing some depositions, raced from downtown to the conservative shul there, Agudas Achem, and I was the 9th person. I waited hopefully until 6 o'clock and the 10th never showed. I had a decision to make. Stay there and hope the 11th showed up, or run down the complex to the old B'nai Abraham from Brenham, which obviously is near and dear to my family and my wife's family especially. But I decided to stay where I was because I knew the minute I walked out the door, the 10th person would show up and they'd be in the same problem I was in. We didn't have a minyan that day. Here at Beth Yeshurun, we sometimes had to pull people out of the office to fill the minyan, and there were even times we'd get on our phones to see who was close and would come to help. Kaddish for me was indescribably soothing. For people who are not familiar with the words of the Kaddish, I urge you to follow the translation when we get to it later on in the service. It's not about death, sorrow, or any of the things we naturally would associate it with, but rather the sanctification and the magnification of God. As I see it, thanking Him for the life of the person who left us. For me, it was a time of remembrance, Zichronot. As Rabbi Strauss alluded to during his sermon this past Shavuot, I personally would think of a different story every time, a different memory of my father every time I'd say Kaddish. It ranged from when he caught me running a gambling ring in junior high school, which was really not a good scene. My jaw still hurts, and I'm 64 years old, to the first New York Islanders playoff win in 1975, which we attended together. Though personal, Kaddish is communal. We must have a minyan, and it's my concern that the odds of continuing to have a minyan are going down. As you know, we have come to call this space a synagogue, but it's literally a Bet Knesset, a house of gathering. We gather here for many reasons. One is to be here for each other. Kaddish is one example of when we need to be here for each other. Now, there are several people who are regulars at the chapel. You can count on them being there every single night. I'm not excluding the morning minyan. I had thought that it was in better shape. I heard a few minutes ago it's really not, so I'll include that as well. But the problem is that the participation level is dwindling. People get older and they stop coming. We need to keep the flow intact so we can be a true Beit Knesset, a true house of gathering. We owe it to each other. So here's my request from you, and I'm not standing here holier than thou. I'm just speaking from someone who's been there. If just 50 people in this congregation would make it a point to attend once a month on different days, the problem goes away. Perhaps some of these people are board members or others as well. Now, my Kaddish is over. It ended back in June. But my personal choice is to still go. I can't stand here behind your own Chodesh and tell you I go every night, but I feel very comfortable telling you I'm there twice a week at least. That helps the others that feel the need to fill that helps others to fill the minyan so that they can say Kaddish. Now look, at that time of evening there's always something else to do. There's always an excuse not to go for the 45 minutes. But in reality, in most times, we can always make time to give it to others. Lori talked about things we could do for the community a few hours ago. This is certainly one I'd like everybody to consider. Personally, those who know me know that I'm a huge fan of the New York Mets and the New York Islanders. I watch every game, even now. When I leave for the chapel and return home afterwards, the score of the game is always the same, whether I went to chapel or not. Midway through my Kaddish term, I took it upon myself to be a leader of the service. At that point, I wish I had spent more time during Hebrew school, actually in Hebrew school, as opposed to cutting class at the kosher deli next to the Hebrew school. But I worked with Richard Cameraman to learn both the Mincha and Marav. It got to the point that I would record the service on my phone, and I had Woody Fox and Andrew Tybal davening on my playlist right between Bruce Springsteen concerts, listening to it between LaGrange and Bastrop on my weekly drive to Horseshoe Bay so I can learn it. And I finally reached the point that on my last day, I was able to lead both services, and I still do it when I'm asked. I didn't do it for me. My sisters probably think I did it for my mom, and there's probably some truth to that, but in reality, I did it because this is a Beit Knesset, and we need each other desperately to fulfill the obligation to say Kaddish. Kaddish preserves Zichronot, remembrance, and perpetuates memory, which makes it easy to reconcile how I'm going to end this discussion to you, quoting obviously from Bruce Springsteen. Death is not the end. I'll see you in my dreams. Kaddish got me to the point where this literally does happen. Shana Tova to all of you, and for those of you who have suffered loss this past year, may the memories of your loved ones be perpetuated in loving memory. Thank you.